In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States didn't just change, it was completely reforged. A quiet, mostly rural nation was thrown into the fires of industry and came out the other side as a global powerhouse. It's a story that really laid the foundation for the world we live in right now. So, how did this all go down? Let's jump in and find out.
Just look at this contrast. On one side, you've got the America that was, a nation of farms, small towns, and artisans, people who made things with their own two hands. And on the other side, the America it became, a nation of factories, sprawling cities, and the anonymous factory worker. So the big question is, how does a country completely reinvent itself in just a couple of decades? It's a huge story of fundamental change.
And we're going to trace this whole story kind of like a ripple effect. We'll start with that initial industrial spark. Then we'll look at the wave of invention it unleashed, the great migration from the farm to the factory, how the very idea of a worker was redefined, and finally, the completely transformed nation that emerged from it all.
All right, so it all kicks off right here. This is the first, and honestly the most powerful ripple, the rise of these massive corporations and heavy industry. This was the engine that powered everything, and I mean everything else that followed.
What we're talking about here is basically the entire economic DNA of the country getting a complete rewrite. The whole focus of the economy literally shifted from the soil to the factory floor. This wasn't just some trend, right? This explosion in big-time manufacturing was a full-on revolution. It created this gravitational pull that just sucked every other part of society into its orbit.
Okay, so that brings us to our second ripple, and you'll see how this just keeps building. An industrial boom this big needed fuel, right? And that fuel was this absolute flood of new technology and just mind-blowing innovation.
And what's just nuts when you look at this timeline is the speed of it all. Seriously, we're talking about going from using candlelight to flipping on an electric light bulb, from riding in horse-drawn buggies to seeing the very first cars and airplanes. This all happened within a single generation. And these weren't just cool gadgets. They were inventions that totally rewired daily life, and, maybe most importantly, the factory itself.
Because that was the name of the game, right? Efficiency. Every single new machine, every new process was designed to do one thing: make more stuff, faster. And this meant that, for the first time on a really massive scale, it was the machine, not the person, that set the pace of work.
So you've got factories booming and technology just racing forward. The third ripple was pretty much inevitable: a massive movement of people. The whole landscape of where Americans lived and how they lived was about to change forever.
And this chart, wow, it illustrates that shift perfectly. Before this whole era, the vast majority of Americans worked in agriculture. But once that industrial engine started roaring, the balance just tipped dramatically. Look at that change. The factory worker really did become the new face of American labor. But you might be asking, why were people leaving the farms in the first place? Well, ironically, it was for the exact same reason the cities were booming: technology. New machines made farms so incredibly productive that you just didn't need as many people to grow the nation's food. And what did that do? It created this huge, available workforce just ready and waiting to pack up and move to the cities for jobs. But, this massive migration, it came at a pretty steep price. The cities were growing way faster than they could handle. This quote really nails the tough reality for so many people. A new life in the city often meant trading wide-open fields for these crowded and often pretty unsanitary living conditions. But for the promise of a steady paycheck, it was a trade-off millions felt they had to make.
Okay, so let's check out our fourth ripple, because it wasn't just where people worked that changed, it was how they worked. The very definition of what it meant to be a worker was about to get completely broken down and put back together in a whole new way.
For centuries, a worker's value was all about their skill. Think about a blacksmith or a weaver or a carpenter. These were masters of their craft, skills they'd honed over years and years. Their knowledge, their expertise, that was their power. But this new industrial system, it had a radically different idea. And then, boom, the assembly line. This was the absolute game changer. The idea was simple but revolutionary. You take a really complex process, like building a car, and you just shatter it into dozens of tiny, simple, repetitive steps. So now, you don't need a master craftsman anymore. You just need somebody to turn the same bolt or attach the same part over and over and over again. Production just skyrockets, costs plummet, and all of a sudden, that specialized skill becomes way less valuable than just being willing to do a simple task. This was a massive, seismic shift from skilled labor to unskilled labor on a huge scale.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. You've got these ripples. Corporate growth, new tech, mass migration, new ways of working, and they all created this one giant tidal wave of change. So what did the new American reality look like after that wave crashed?
You know, when you really boil it all down, it comes to these 5 key takeaways. We saw the workforce flip from the farm to the factory. We saw populations move from the countryside into the cities. We saw human hands getting replaced by machines, all for efficiency. And at the same time, agriculture actually boomed with less labor, while the factories pretty much devalued craftsmanship in favor of mass production. This wasn't just some phase the country was going through. This was the blueprint for modern America being drawn up in real time.
So this period of massive upheaval really did forge the nation we know today. It created absolutely astonishing wealth, but it also created these deep, long-lasting social challenges. So I'll leave you with this to think about. As we face our own major technological shifts, with automation and AI, what echoes of this great transformation can we see in our own economy and in our own society right now?